Welcome back. I'm your host, Adam. Unfortunately, Peter can't be with us this time, but as the saying goes, the show must go on. Hopefully, he'll be with us next time. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to unpack talking about movies part two and why not. All right, so in the last episode, I said that I thought the best film ever made was Maverick. Then I realized that I was thinking in terms of when you buy a ticket, you go into a cinema, because in the movie theater, the jets are life size. However, if you take this and put it on the Blu-ray and watch it at home, sorry, Maverick is just not the same experience. All right, so what I'd like to talk a little bit about is the process of when you watch a movie, you temporarily suspend your disbelief. And that is how we can enjoy a few different genres specifically. So the first one I'd like to unpack is science fiction. Now, as a kid watching Star Wars, I loved it, but at the same point, I thought, okay, there's no sound in space, there's no gravity in space. Why is the cast all white? Except for Lando. It's just, there's so many things about it that bug me, but you just kind of have to suspend your disbelief and dislike and just enjoy the story the same way you do when you hear mythology or religion. You realize that, okay, parts of this don't make sense, but there is fruit among the thorns. There is diamonds in the roughs. There is an interesting story to be told if you can just maneuver through things that you dislike, which is what I recommend the same way you listen to me talking about these films. All right, so Star Wars, loved it to pieces. One funny thing I thought as a kid was the relationship between Han Solo and Chewbacca. Because in there, Chewbacca is talking like, and Han Solo is like, right, yes, we should take it to Warp 9. And I thought, okay, that makes no sense. Until one day I was riding on the trains and I was trying to figure out where I was going, and I was asking passengers, like, am I on the right train? And this woman held up her phone, and on it it said, I don't speak English, but I can write it very well. You actually need to transfer blah 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 blah, and very detailed descriptions of how I should get to where I was going. And I thought, I said to her, I was like, you really can't understand English? And she's, no, I really can't speak it, but I can type it. And then I suddenly realized the relationship between Chewbacca and Han Solo is very feasible. All right. There's a lot of things I'd like to say about Star Wars, but I'm sure all of it's already been said. So enough to say about that. So moving on. Oh no, one thing though I would like to say is interesting point is this story took place in a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago. Therefore, all the reality problems that I have with it kind of dismissed. And then moving to the next one, Star Trek. I'm a huge fan of the original Star Trek movies. The problems I have with recent films across all genres is this too much. We just gonna make money, and they're just so flat. But anyway, 1980 or 81, Star Trek: The First Motion Picture. This film is amazing. For the first 30 minutes, planet Vulcan, the Klingons flying through the dust cloud or whatever it is. Amazing. The rest of the movie, not so great. But Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, 3, In Search of Spock, 4, directed by Leonard Nimoy. Amazing films. 5, not so much. 6, pretty good. Pretty good. I really enjoyed these films. And I'm not sure if you realize, but a lot of scientific advancements, inventions, and technology that we use all the time came from the old Star Trek, right? The cell phone, the idea of communicating with people wirelessly, the Bluetooth, hopefully I say her name right, Bluetooth intercoms, screen to screen communication, like in Zoom. That was back in the early days of Star Trek, and there's so many more. Just Google it. There's a long list of inventions that we use all the time. Tablets, um, voice communicator, translators, right? Instant translators. Amazing. Okay, so the reason I brought up those films is to talk about my favorite science fiction movie. And this movie is Contact. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen it. and if you haven't, you really should. The movie starts off with the scene of Earth, and the camera pans back and it zooms out. And as it zooms out, you hear the radio signals or broadcasts through time, because the farther back you go from Earth, the farther back in time the radio signals go. And so you go past Mars, the asteroid belt, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and then you go past, and then you're going back in time. You hear the sound, and then it goes silent, and you realize you can kind of envision. Okay, well, humans were still around at that time, but there was no broadcast before we had that technology. And then it zooms back and it goes outside the Milky Way galaxy, trillions of stars, and then you see all the other galaxies, and then galaxies and galaxies and galaxies and galaxies and galaxies and galaxies, and then it's light, and then you're inside the main character's eye. Brilliant, brilliant film. What makes this movie really stand out as a movie, as a science fiction movie, is, as I was talking about, temporarily suspending your disbelief. Movies that do not require you to do that really hit a nerve. So when this movie came out, President Bill Clinton was the president, and he's in the movie as the president. A lot of, I think almost all the scientists that are in the movie are based on actual people. Um, I'm sure for their anonymity, anonymity, they uh, they didn't televise that or broadcast that, but it's all based on real people. The politicians, Larry King is Larry King, and so the movie is not so. It's not fantasy. It's not like science fiction. It is scientific fiction. Carl Sagan wrote this masterpiece. Unfortunately, passed away as the film was released. But it's absolutely amazing, because the whole idea, when you look at the size of the universe, the thought must come to you, as it comes to most people's, there must be millions and millions of other intelligent species in the universe. The problem is that everything is so far away. There is no way to communicate, as is illustrated in the opening scene of the film. It's it's just amazing. It's amazing. What also makes this movie great, there's so many things, but the idea of spiritual messages and reality, like scientific data, information. And the main characters of this film, one is an enlightened spiritual leader, and then you have the scientist, and how their minds or their fields or their convictions are interwoven. And you realize that we're not really human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. But that's my interpretation of where the film goes. Um, Also, politically, what would happen when or if we make contact with intelligent life elsewhere? These are this is probably exactly what would happen. And when you watch the film, you're like, yeah, religious nuts, fanatics, the militarization of the project, so many things. It's right on the money. There's no need to willingly suspend your disbelief. It is very realistic, but it's dealing with the question that is really awe-inspiring. Are we alone? Anyway, okay, enough about science fiction. Next, I'd like to talk about superhero movies. I am a comic nut. I have been a collector of comic books since I was 4, and I still collect them, and I still love comics. And superhero movies that came out when I was born was Superman. And even as a toddler, I thought, okay, he looks really good when he's illustrated in a comic book, but a man wearing tights with the underwear on the outside of his pants, okay. And then Spider-Man came out. There was the animated show on TV, which was always camp, like the original Batman uh, television series. And then they had the motion picture, I guess you call it, the TV show Spider-Man, and I thought, yeah, it's not that great. 1989, Tim Burton's Batman came out. Boom, very cool. And then there was word, because Marvel was like, okay, we got to do that. There was word mentioned that they were going to make a Spider-Man film. I waited 13 years for that film to come out. And when I went to see it in the movie theater, I thought, what a steaming pile of dog crap this is. Yes, I love the comic books, and a grown man wearing spandex suit, it's just not that cool. So what did the movie's producers do? Is they thought, okay, right, it's not that cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a lot of the elements in the comic books and change them. So when you're watching the X-Men movie or the Avengers or the umpteen zillion other um, movies that were created, they're just not that good. And this is just my opinion. I know you're going to have a different opinion than mine, and that is completely fine. This is just my opinion that I think most of the superhero movies are really just lame. But there's a few that stand out as being really good in my opinion. Wonder Woman, really good. Avengers 1, amazing. Avengers 2, not so good, man. Just clusterfuck. Uh, the original Batman movies, really good. Iron Man. But all the while I'm watching these movies, I thought, okay, we have the technology to make a Toy Story and to make animated movies. Why don't they just make a superhero movie that looks like the comic books? What's going on? Why do they have to make it look real? They look cool drawn, like capes that are like 100 yards long. Looks cool drawn, but in reality, it's not cool. And then finally they did it. They made a comic book that looks, or they made a movie that looks like the comic book, Spider-Verse. When this film came out, finally I was vindicated. Yes, that is the look they should go for. That is what they should go for. To make an animated movie that looks like the comic books. So big up Spider-Verse, good one. But as a kid, I love this. I still love the idea of fantastic beings with superpowers. And there's a whole genre of movies that I think another culture nailed way before Marvel and DC and Warner Brothers and Disney and all those guys made the films. And that is classic Chinese kung fu movies. We're talking about beings that have the ability to jump very, very high, to shoot energy through their body, to fight faster than the human is capable of fighting. They're basically taking like gods and goddesses or super powered beings that have chiseled their own being into weapons. And the Chinese kung fu movies, when I was a kid, blew my mind. I'm from a small town on the east coast of Canada in New Brunswick, and then I was watching Chinese kung fu movies. I had a friend, Randy, who brought over a library of these films, and I just immersed myself in them because they had a window to another culture. The clothing, the stories, the food, the temples, the houses, the foliage in the jungles, like all of it was foreign to me. And the fighting styles, I was blown away. Those are the great superhero movies in my mind. Um, and I think what makes them great is I don't think they were in it just to make money. They were in it for the storytelling to make the movie themselves. And there's so many greats like Jackie Chan, Bolo Yang, Carter Wong, famous in made famous in Western culture through what was it called? Big Trouble, Little China, or basically Americanized version of a kung fu movie, so the American audience can digest that kind of format. It's like a window, a gateway into that genre. And of course, Bruce Lee, who many people don't realize was actually born in San Francisco. It's actually American. But yeah, kung fu movies, great. Okay, moving along. Kids movies. Kids movies. Why kids movies? Well, I have two kids, and when they started watching movies, I was I was very skeptical. I thought, okay, there's no way I'm going to enjoy kids movies. And then they put on one called Hotel Transylvania. And I thought, okay, this just doesn't look good. What is this? And it's written by Adam Sandler and my friend Tim Rutter actually worked on it. Big ups. But this movie really impressed me. Probably because I wasn't expecting anything. But Hotel Transylvania is interesting because basically in a story you have like man, human, woman, of course, being politically correct. You have man versus man, man versus nature, or man versus himself. And then you have Hotel Transylvania, which is really not any of those because it's dealing with an issue of xenophobia, right? You have the monsters and then you have the humans. And how they unpack this issue is hilarious and also enlightening at the same time. Like it's a really good one. Hotel Transylvania 2, also really interesting for myself because my wife is Japanese and my children are both. I don't like the term half. They're both, and they have Mavis and Johnny have a child that's both. So it really resonates with what I experienced living in Japan, which is completely alien culture to what I'm used to. That has its own pros and cons. That's for another episode. Great films, good stuff. And another movie that I really like. Actually, there's a number of movies that do this, and what they do. I was going to mention Zootopia, and what they do is they package it so it looks like a kids movie, but there are layers to it, and there's some layers that will resonate very much with adults that have been there. When I watch Zootopia, there's so many things. Like I've lived in that apartment. I'm not a police officer, but there's so many points in that movie. Coming of age, moving to the big city by myself, like experiencing so much of stepping outside of comfort zone, falling on my face, getting back up, keep going through life, just like the bunny rabbit. There's so many layers that I resonate with as an adult, but children see it as, a cute bunny going through this adventure, perhaps preparing them, foretelling them of what coming of age and becoming an adult is actually like. Uh, so many great. There's actually an interesting film that I saw that has these layers, and is what's the movie called? The Good Dinosaur. I watched it in Japanese um, with the Japanese voices, and they nailed the voice characters. Then I watched in English and thought they have casted the voices completely wrong. The demeanor, the characteristics of the father are completely different in Japanese, much, much better, which is probably the only movie I will say that for. Because if you watch Star Wars in Japanese, you're like, that's not Darth Vader's voice. In some movies, the voice is so important. And for all the people making animation, can we please go back to having unknowns do the voices? Having like, okay, these super famous people doing the voices of these characters. When you hear the voice, you think, oh, okay, that's a super famous person that I know. They're already super famous. They don't need more exposure. I really like hearing a voice, and then if you don't know who it is, then you associate the voice with that cartoon character, and it's more freeing. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Artist documentary movies. Not really documentary, but basically, the story of the artist's life made into a movie. There's so back in 1956 they made one, Lust for Life, Vincent van Gogh, and that's an interesting, very interesting film. And recently they made one. What's it called? Loving Vincent, about Van Gogh. Every frame is an oil painting. It really is mind blowing. They also made Frida Kahlo movie, Jackson Pollock. They made one about Picasso called Surviving Picasso, and I didn't. I'm not a fan of Picasso. I'm sorry, the man was a pig, and I didn't make it through the film. Some people say he's a great artist. I never really thought so, and then I went to art school to learn why he was great, and I still don't think he's that great. Super famous, most well known artist, great. Okay, His son's really cool. Uh, Curated the gallery in Sano, I believe it's called, not Sano, west of Japan. Huge replica gallery. Takes you a week to get through the entire thing. Brilliant stuff. So no disrespect to the uh, Picasso family. Just Pablo himself. He's a playboy. Come on, like yeah, snap out of it, grow up, as we all do. Bohemian Rhapsody. Bohemian Rhapsody. The number of movies about the life of musicians and artists. I think it's great because it's edutainment, right? You're going through the life of these people and seeing it in fantastic ways. And there's so many artists that have been out there. And I actually I reached out to Roger Waters, and I messaged him and I said, you know what would be really cool is if you redo Pink Floyd The Wall with today's graphics. I mean, the animation is really good in it, but it would be cool to see that done with today's graphics. I mean, it's an older story, but I think it would work really well. And one film that I haven't seen that I wouldn't mind taking a boo at would be the life story of Michael Trent Reznor. I think that would be an interesting film. Looking forward to that one. Of course, that's just an idea I just throw out there right now. I think it'd be really good. And there's also some hip hop stars. I watched NWA, the film, and I didn't realize that's how it ended. I can't watch it again. Another genre that temporarily requires you to suspend your disbelief are horror films. As a child, I was a huge fan of the classic Dracula, Frankenstein, the old Wolfman movies. And part of the reason being is I know that those films are created in a different world. Like Bela Lugosi's Dracula, 1936, Boris Karloff's Monster of Frankenstein, 1927, I think, 24. And that film was made in a different world. 100 years ago, the world was a completely different place, which adds to the mystique or the edginess of it being in black and white. And but they also didn't really know how to make film. They were filming it like it was a stage theater. And anyway, great films. But still, there's an element of you have to find Dracula, Frankenstein scary, you have to use your imagination. And I find if an idea requires too much of asking you to believe in something, you have to believe this and imagine this, then it's kind of like you have to meet the fear halfway. There is a film that doesn't do this at all, similar to Contact in that it was more realistic, and that is the Blair Witch Project, where it was filmed with camcorders back in the day. And then you have this idea that this is actually really happening. And that um, is pretty scary because everyone who's lived near the woods has experienced going through the woods at night and the very primitive internal fear that you could be eaten alive by a bear or a cougar or some predator that really goes deep in the nerve of the human being. And that's where they filmed it. So there's that primal fear of this could be real. They're in the dark woods, and that really just plays upon the fear. Whereas a lot of horror movies, like slasher films, are just violence, like blood and guts. Like that's not really scary. It's just shocking. Like The Exorcist. I think a lot of people don't realize The Exorcist is actually okay. I have seen real, uh, okay, real. I mean, what you believe, I don't know, but I have seen cases where demons have been inside people. They have mental problems. I mean, whatever you call it, the people are stuck, and they're basically like an exorcist. Okay, I've seen a real exorcist. Okay, uh, that wasn't as scary. I was seeing a person in that particular possessed state. I just felt a lot of sympathy, not fear. What scares people, I think, about The Exorcist is the fact that a parent would let their child do a role like that. And the directors would say, oh, that's okay, let's just keep it rolling and let the child do those acts in that film. I think that is more the unconscious fear. Is like, what's wrong with these people? How could they make a film like that? I'm sorry, but The Exorcist is basically a smut film. It's shocking. Anyway, enough about that. Horror, horror, horror. As a kid, one genre of movie, not genre, one kind of horror movie that would scare me: zombie movies. And why? Again, zombies are real. And if you don't think so, look at what the smartphone is doing to people around the world. You get on the train, everyone's on the smartphone. I see people walking around, walking into walls and poles like zombies on their smartphone. It's sucking their mind out. The mindless beings walking around, but they're not conscious. You're being pacified by conscious stimulation of a smartphone. So that freaks me out because zombies are basically real. So watching a zombie movie is like they turn on you and they're all out to get you. Love it, love it. Okay, I think I covered everything that I wanted to say about film. There's so many more, but you don't need to hear it from me. The best thing is to live your life with happiness and peace. So that's it for me. Short episode. It would be twice as long if Peter was here to make fun of me and have a little bit of fun like that. So hopefully next time he'll be with us. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my rant. Blah 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 blah. Sending the love. Peace.